Welcome back to our Fusion 360 tutorials. In this video, I'm going to explain how you can change your different views. So how you want to look at this object, whether it's looking at the bottom, the top, right side, rotating it, zooming, etc. So from our previous video, we saw that we could use our view cube up here, selecting different surfaces or different right, front, bottom, going back to the home key all the time, or holding the left mouse button down on the cube to rotate that accordingly. So that is a very handy tool, especially the home tool, if for some reason you get into a position or a viewpoint that is difficult to view. So other than that, we do have some other options down here under in this menu down here. I'll go through these one by one. So we do have an option for viewports. Selecting on this, we can select multiple views. So we can actually select which viewport we want to work on, and we can continue to do any work within these views. And when we do, it will be reflected in all the views. So that could come in handy. Typically, I like to work on a single view mode, especially on smaller screens. The second one, grid and snaps. We can change, add a layout grid, and we can change a snap to a grid. Don't use this too much myself, but if you get used to using a grid or snaps, you can use this. I will turn that off for now. The next one is display settings. So there are some things in here that we would want to change randomly, sometimes throughout your models. So our visual style we can change to just a shaded. So you will see a little bit of lines that disappeared in there. Typically, I like to work with shaded with edges. That's shaded with hidden lines, so we can view our hidden lines under there. And shaded with visible edges only, which is my preference. So you can see the little black lines around some of the contour shapes of that object. We can also do wireframe and wireframe with hidden edges and visible edges. I will stick with the shaded edges. We can change to a mesh display showing face groups. Typically, I do not use that. The environment, this is where we can change our background. So depending on what maybe your colors you're working on or whether you're doing screenshots, in this case, I'm going to change mine to Tranquility Blue so we can see some other options coming up. And under effects, don't use these too much, but you can go through these. You can see you can turn the ground plane off, ground shadows, etc. Take a look through those and experiment to see what those all do. Not going to go through each one in this video. Object visibility. So when we are working, we can see, turn off planes, axes, user axes, planes, etc. We have the option to turn those off. And our camera, we can change that to an orthographic or perspective view, or perspective with ortho faces. So I typically work in orthographic and ground plane offset, which I typically don't use, so we don't have to worry about that as well either. We can also go to a full screen mode. Into the zoom window. So if we clicked zoom window, that is similar to an AutoCAD command if you worked with AutoCAD, where we can select draw a window using the left mouse button. And if I want to zoom in on this area, I can draw a window and zoom into that area. So that tool can be handy sometimes. And we do have a zoom fit. So that's going to fit that graphics display, your object, to the window. And that is already zoomed in there. So if I was zoomed all the way out there and select the F6 key or the zoom fit, that's going to bring us up so that it fits in the window. You memorizing these keys, fit F6, those are shortcut keys, very good productivity improvement tools. Next to that, we have the zoom plus or minus, so we can move our mouse up and down, zoom in, zoom out. Next one is the pan tool, so we can move our product or our model within the graphics window there to where we like. And the next one is a look at. So this is a handy tool that I will use sometimes. If I want to look specifically at a surface orthographically, if for some reason my object was twisted like this, and I know I don't want to, I want to look at this surface here orthographically, instead of trying to rotate this to get that get the shape right dead on, I'm going to, I can't usually get it perfect, so I'm going to use this look at, and I'm going to select that surface, and that's going to rotate the object so I am looking right at that surface orthographically. And our last tool here is the orbit tool. So we have a constrained orbit and we have a free orbit. So looking at the constrained orbit, you will see a circle, light faded circle that's popped up there, kind of like a crosshairs. And we see some horizontal lines, some vertical lines. And I'm going to go back to my default home view there and click on my constrained orbit, and those lines are there. If I'm moving my mouse across here, and you'll see the mouse cursor change, and if I left click on that, this is going to rotate my object just vertically in that orientation. So if I go left or right, it's only going to rotate it in that orientation. Likewise, clicking on the horizontal bar there, it is going to rotate it only in a horizontal position. So you can use these tools to get a more precise view if you like. And if I click on anywhere on this circle, see the cursor change and a little rotated arrow there, that will rotate our object counterclockwise or clockwise. So it comes in handy sometimes to get some precise views, especially if you're going to do some screenshots. It comes in very handy. If I rotate in the center of the circle, that is kind of like a free rotate. So kind of like using the left mouse button on the view cube. So we can just left click inside there and rotate that object freely, and likewise outside the circle as well too. Just going to go back to my home, default home, so that my object is in the center again. And when I am selecting the constrained orbit, if I do zoom out and put my object over to the side here, it does not rotate about the center anymore. Not of the center of this object. It's still going to rotate about the center of this little crosshairs in there. So if I rotate this horizontally, you will see the object is not rotating about itself. It's actually rotating about the center of the circle. So if I used my pan key and moved my object further out, it would create even a larger circle. So if I use my pan tool, and I'll put that over to the side there, go back to my constrained orbit, and again you're going to see that rotate about that center of that circle in there, and the same vertically. So you can always get some different views in there. And just go back to my home, and that concludes this tutorial on how to rotate your object, view your object in different viewpoints.